Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Backbench Business Committee for allowing this debate. And as numerous honourable and right honourable members have noted, this did feel rather like finding a good pub on a long walk when you're feeling rather weary and looking for a welcome break. And it has been conducted in a very good-humoured manner throughout this afternoon. When I was first elected at the end of the coalition government, pubs was the only vote, I believe, that the government lost in all those years. So today we are united on this topic. It's just all the other votes that we seem to be losing. Can I thank my honourable friend for Dudley South for sponsoring this debate. He, like the honourable gentleman from West Bromwich West, spoke about the Black Country's long association with beer and brewing. Well, I grew up in the shadow of Banks's Brewery in Wolverhampton, and I spent my teenage years, rather like, I think, the honourable lady from Oxford East, working in pubs that his constituents might drive out to in Staffordshire and Shropshire. The honourable lady for Stoke North, I thank her also for her contribution this afternoon. I've had a few drinks near her constituency in the Potteries, not least on the night that I lost my first election in 2010. And given the scale of the result, I probably should have drunk a pint from the Titanic brewery. But I don't want to be too negative about what we find today. Actually, there are many great positives about beer and the brewing industry across the United Kingdom, many of which have been heard over the last couple of hours. Not least the flowering of the British craft beer industry, which has brought fresh life to the market. It's created a new generation of entrepreneurs, many of which I know in my own constituency, a former brewing town, Newark-on-Trent, which has seen several new breweries created in recent years, and given people across the length and breadth of the country unprecedented choice. As we've heard, that word has spread across the world, and exports have risen very significantly. Happy to give way.
I'm very grateful to him for giving way, and he's absolutely right that the small business brewing relief is an example of government forgoing a bit of tax, but actually a huge industry flowering on the back of that. Is that an example he might take for some of his other decisions?
Well, it certainly is, and let me come in a few moments to the relief that he speaks about, which has played a significant part in that, and I believe we can make that better and fit for purpose for the future. Exports have risen now to £500 million a year for beer, and we heard earlier the tremendous results also with respect to Scotch whisky and other spirits. With respect to small brewers' relief, this is the relief that gives the smallest brewers across the country a 50% reduction in duty, and it has helped, as we've heard, to fuel the explosion of local breweries. We now have over 2,000 breweries across the country. At the autumn budget, we announced a review of this relief to give the opportunity for brewers to give their thoughts on a relief which is now 17 years old and hasn't been reviewed systematically over the course of that period. We've opened the review and we've had over 500 responses, which we will now be carefully reviewing and report back on in due course. Our motives at the Treasury have not been to extract more revenue from the sector, certainly not to end the relief, but for, I think, some of the reasons that the Honourable Gentleman from Keighley and others mentioned, that there is some evidence that whilst this relief has been hugely positive in some respects, it has limited growth for some businesses who would like to employ more people, expand, and are concerned by the cliff edge that the relief provides. And I hope that we may be able to, working with breweries, with organisations like SEBA, work through that and do something positive for the industry going forwards. With respect to beer duty, we have taken a number of steps over the course of the last 9 years now to reduce and improve the situation in a country which, as has been widely acknowledged, has high levels of alcohol taxation. We removed the beer escalator. We've either cut or frozen beer duty in 6 of the last 7 fiscal events, so that the duty on a pint is now lower than it was in 2012. In real terms, this long-term and significant action by the government has kept prices low for everyone, and contrasts with the picture for the period from 1997 to 2010, which saw beer duty increase by 60%. Now, this was underlined at the most recent budget with another freeze on beer duty, meaning that the price of a typical pint of beer is now 2p lower than if prices had risen with inflation. I appreciate that there's always more that we could do in this respect. We're also focused on other alcohols, cider, of course, and spirits. We heard from my honourable friend from Ayr, Carrick and Cumnock the importance of spirits to his constituency, as to many others across Scotland, and to the honourable lady from Aberdeen North, as to the importance to the wider Scottish economy. She also asked, I think, two other questions of me. Firstly, with respect to post-duty point dilution. Well, we have given this now considerable thought over some time, and we've announced at the budget that we will be bringing this practice to an end from April 2020. She also asked, as did the Honourable Lady for Oxford East, about a wider review of spirits, of alcohol duty more generally. This is a complex area, and there are clearly no easy answers. There are certainly few answers which are fiscally neutral and where there are no losers, which would be important, I'm sure, to many who work or own businesses in this sector. I think perhaps it is premature to conduct a review at this moment because the greatest flexibility in this respect will be available to us after we leave the European Union, and it may then be a choice for a future Chancellor to take action. We also heard from the Honourable Gentleman from Strangford and the Honourable Lady from Faversham with respect to responsible drinking and the question of whether we could lower duty for low alcohol beers. Well, we are somewhat constrained here with respect to EU law. The EU Alcohol Structures Directive sets the maximum threshold for reduced duty on low alcohol beer at 2.8%. HMG charges reduced duty on beer of strength of 1.2 to 2.8% of 6p per pint. Until we leave the EU, we can't raise the threshold for low alcohol beer above 2.8%. But this is something that we will work with our partners across Europe, and of course we could have further flexibility in the years ahead. We have taken action as a government in some specific circumstances with respect, for example, to white cider, and our approach is that we will continue, as necessary, to take action where there is clear evidence that certain alcohol duty rates are causing difficulties for society. Now, we've heard a great deal about pubs, which are, as we heard from numerous colleagues, the bedrock of many communities, both rural and urban, as the Honourable Gentleman from Chesterfield rightly highlighted. They boost the economy, they create jobs, and they act crucially as hubs for our communities. We've heard about their importance for tackling loneliness, the issues for older people, whether older gentlemen, as we heard, or indeed others, and that they are great places for people to work in and to start their careers. Pub industry currently employs around 450,000 people, and many of those are younger people, as has been said.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise as an older gentleman again. But the fact of the matter is, what pubs do, for some, imagine some people who are in pretty awful accommodation, bedsit or something like that. The pubs, the local pub, a really nice environment, friendly, warm. This is the sort of place that they can go to. And that's the real advantage, in my view, for pubs locally.
Well, I agree with everything that the Honourable Gentleman has said. Let me speak briefly about business rates, because clearly that's been an important element of this debate, and in the short amount of time I have available, I would like to touch on this. Numerous members, including the Honourable lady from St Albans, have spoken of this. She brought some of her publicans to see me at the Treasury to discuss this. We've taken a number of actions to support pubs by lowering their tax burden. The most important one, which comes into effect from 1st of April, is that the Chancellor announced at the budget a substantial cut of 1/3 to the business rates bills of small and medium-sized retailers, including pubs, coming into effect this year. That has been set for maximum impact at those retailers, including pubs, with a rateable value of £51,000 or below. I appreciate that that will have less impact in communities like hers, where rateable values are high, but across the whole of the United Kingdom, this means that 90% of those retailers will benefit, and for pubs it'll be between 70 and 85%. For pubs, it will mean a tax saving of up to £8,000 a year. We also previously had the £1,000 discount for small and medium-sized pubs, and many pubs will also benefit from up to 100% small business rates relief, or the 100% rural rate relief, and of course all ratepayers are benefiting from the switch from RPI to CPI. Now, we also had briefly raised by the Honourable Lady, I think from Blaydon, the request that many have, including from the industry, to create a differential rate of beer duty for those drinking in a pub and those purchasing in a supermarket or a convenience store. I can see the strong argument for this, but unfortunately this isn't possible under EU law. Duty is levied on production and not on the place of consumption. But again, this might be something that we could turn to in the future should we have sufficient flexibility. Can I conclude by thanking the Backbench Business Committee, the Honourable Gentleman and the Honourable Lady for the superb speeches that they gave today. I think this debate did unify the House and demonstrate the important role that pubs can play in our communities. I will certainly relay the very strong feelings from across the House to my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, with respect to the next budget and the future of beer duty in particular. I think the voice of the House is very clear that it wants, like I think people across the length and breadth of the country, further and continued support for beer, breweries and our important pubs.
Yeah. Mike Wood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank all honourable and right honourable members for their contribution